Ladies and gentlemen, this is a special report from Tay Strategic Daily Brief, with breaking developments that are shaking the world to its core. The clock is ticking on what could be the most perilous geopolitical flashpoint since the Cold War. Right now, as we speak, American and Israeli forces are unleashing a relentless barrage against Iran in Operation Epic Fury, a joint military campaign that's decimating Tehran's defenses at a blistering pace. Explosions are lighting up the night skies over Tehran, missiles are streaking across the Persian Gulf, and the global economy is teetering on the brink of chaos. This isn't just another skirmish in the Middle East. This is a full-throttle confrontation that's escalating by the hour, drawing in superpowers, rattling alliances, and threatening to ignite a wider regional inferno. Picture this. Just moments ago, U.S. Central Command confirmed that American B-2 stealth bombers have pulverized deeply buried Iranian ballistic missile sites, vaporizing launchers that were primed to fire on Israel and U.S. assets. These strikes come on the heels of a daring U.S. submarine operation that torpedoed and sank an Iranian warship in the Indian Ocean, sending shockwaves through Iran's already crippled navy. President Donald Trump, in a fiery post on Truth Social, declared victory is imminent, boasting that Iran's military is being totally demolished far ahead of schedule. But Iran isn't backing down. Reports are flooding in of retaliatory missile salvos slamming into U.S. bases in Bahrain, Qatar, and Jordan, with Iranian state media vowing a crushing response that will continue until the aggressors are defeated. The urgency here cannot be overstated. As I speak, the death toll is mounting. Nearly 50 top Iranian officials, including Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, were eliminated in a precision bunker strike that lasted under a minute, a move Israeli defense forces describe as dismantling the heart of Tehran's extremist ideology. Hezbollah, Iran's proxy in Lebanon, has shattered a fragile ceasefire by launching rockets and drones at Israeli cities, prompting Israel to close sacred sites in Jerusalem's Old City, the Western Wall, the Temple Mount, fearing direct hits on holy ground that could spark unimaginable outrage across the Muslim, Christian, and Jewish worlds. UAE air defenses are intercepting waves of Iranian drones and missiles, but not without cost. 3 foreign workers dead, over 100 injured, as fragments rain down on civilian areas. This crisis erupted with lightning speed. What began as simmering tensions over Iran's nuclear ambitions and proxy aggressions has exploded into open warfare, with U.S. and Israeli jets dominating the skies, erasing 60 to 80% of Iran's air defenses, missile stockpiles, and naval fleet in mere days. Trump, addressing a White House event, thundered that Iran is calling for a deal, but the U.S. will accept nothing short of unconditional surrender, promising to rebuild Iran into an economic powerhouse afterward, his signature "Make Iran Great Again" rallying cry. Yet, from Tehran, interim leaders like President Masoud Pezeshkian are defiantly rejecting negotiations, accusing Washington and Tel Aviv of war crimes and breaches of the UN Charter. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Esmail Baghai insists their strikes on U.S. targets are legitimate self-defense, pledging to defend sovereignty with all might. The world is watching in horror as this unfolds. European leaders, Britain, France, Germany, are appalled by Iran's reckless counterattacks, pledging to support U.S. defensive actions to neutralize missile threats at their source. Russia condemns the strikes, urging restraint, while China remains eerily silent, perhaps calculating its own stakes in Iranian oil supplies. In Sri Lanka, an Iranian logistics ship limps into port with engine failure, its crew seeking refuge amid the chaos, a stark symbol of Tehran's unraveling capabilities. And here at home, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt assures the nation that U.S. munitions stockpiles are more than enough to sustain the fight, even as defense contractors ramp up production in emergency meetings with the president. But make no mistake, the pace is accelerating. Just in the last hour, fresh Israeli airstrikes hammered command centers in Tehran and Hezbollah strongholds in Beirut, while U.S. forces report sinking over 24 Iranian vessels in 3 days. Iran's responses are growing more desperate. Barrages of Ahmad and Ghadar missiles aimed at Israel, some slipping through defenses to wound civilians in Jerusalem neighborhoods. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps warns of a prolonged battle, targeting U.S. presence in Gulf states without mercy. This is no static standoff. It's a vortex pulling in Kurds consulting with U.S. forces for potential uprisings, Turkey eyeing the fray nervously, and Gulf monarchies like Saudi Arabia and the UAE on high alert, their skies filled with interceptors. As we dive deeper into this maelstrom, stay with us, because every minute counts. The markets are in free fall, oil is skyrocketing, and the specter of nuclear escalation looms. This is the breaking point, where history is being written in fire and fury. Hold on tight, the storm is just beginning. Turning now to the heart of this catastrophe, what just happened to propel us into this abyss? It started with a calculated deception. Israeli and American intelligence orchestrated a masterful ruse. IDF commanders publicly heading home for the Sabbath, lulling Iranian leaders into a false sense of security. Then, in a blitz that lasted seconds, precision strikes obliterated an underground bunker in Tehran, a sprawling complex built by Khamenei himself for military plotting and ideological indoctrination. Nearly 50 regime elites perished instantly, a decapitation blow that has left Iran reeling under an interim council scrambling to maintain control. But the assault didn't stop there. IDF forces dismantled 6 ballistic missile launchers and 3 advanced air defense systems mere minutes before they could unleash hell on Israel, a preemptive masterstroke deepening the wound on Tehran's firing capabilities. Simultaneously, a U.S. submarine prowled the Indian Ocean, firing torpedoes that sent the Iranian warship Iris Boucher to the depths, its crew fleeing to Sri Lanka in disarray. President Anura Kumara Dissanayake of Sri Lanka described it as not an ordinary situation, handled under international treaties, but it's clear. Iran's navy is hemorrhaging, with 24 ships destroyed in days, rendering their maritime threats toothless. Hezbollah's entry amplified the mayhem. Breaching the November 2024 ceasefire, the group fired rockets and drones at Israeli targets, the first major violation prompting immediate retaliation. Israeli police spokesperson Lieutenant Dean Elsdon blamed Iran for endangering holy sites, closing the Western Wall and Temple Mount after a near-miss projectile landed perilously close to Jerusalem's Old City. The responsibility lies solely with those launching missiles at our holy city, he stated, highlighting Iran's alleged disregard for civilian lives across faiths. From the Iranian side, the retaliation has been fierce and widespread, launching barrages of up to 35 missiles at Israel, including Khaybar Shakan and Fath-1 variants. Tehran has also hammered U.S. bases in Bahrain, Qatar, the UAE, Kuwait, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia. IRGC-affiliated media claim hits on 14 U.S. installations, with Major General Ali Abdullahi Ali Abadi vowing strikes until the U.S. and Israel are definitively defeated. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi clarified they're targeting U.S. presence, not Gulf neighbors, but the spillover is inevitable. UAE defenses downed 109 of 112 drones and 9 ballistic missiles. Yet 3 drones penetrated, killing workers from Pakistan, Nepal, and Bangladesh, injuring 112 more. Trump's rhetoric has fueled the fire. At a White House gathering with Inter-Miami CF, he proclaimed U.S. and Israeli forces are destroying Iran's missiles and drones every single hour, insisting Iran wants peace, but the U.S. is ready to fight after 47 years of horror. His demand for unconditional surrender, echoed by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's assertion of total dominance over skies, contrasts sharply with Iran's UN ambassador Amir Saeed Iravani denouncing the attacks as a war crime. Iran has appealed to the United Nations, exercising self-defense rights under the Charter, while vowing no negotiations amid ongoing aggression. The timeline is a whirlwind. Day 7 of Operation Epic Fury sees B-2 bombers striking buried sites, adding to over 2,000 targets hit. 80% of air defenses gone, 60% of launchers eradicated. Iran's Kurdish regions simmer, with groups like PJAK eyeing U.S. support for ops, though Turkey watches warily. Mediation whispers emerge. Pezeshkian hints at talks addressing the instigators, but IRGC denies weakness, promising unrelenting force. Drones have hit the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh, prompting evacuations in Bahrain, Iraq, and Jordan, while Hezbollah assaults Tel Aviv. This sequence of events has unfolded with terrifying velocity, from bunker busts to naval sinkings, proxy flare-ups to base bombardments. The U.S. claims munition sufficiency, ramping production, but Iran's Mosaic doctrine, autonomous field commanders, ensures resilience. As strikes intensify, with fresh waves over Tehran and Beirut, the narrative shifts from surprise to sustained onslaught, each action begetting fiercer reprisals in a cycle that's spiraling out of control. Why is this extremely dangerous? Because we're not just talking about a regional spat. This is a powder keg with global fuses. Iran's existential threats perception, as analyzed by experts like Javed Ali, means they'll respond with unrestrained fury, viewing U.S.-Israeli strikes as regime-ending assaults. With Khamenei's death leaving no clear successor, internal chaos could breed desperate measures, including unleashing remaining missile arsenals or activating sleeper cells for terrorism worldwide. The nuclear shadow darkens everything. Though strikes targeted nuclear sites in past escalations, the current campaign risks pushing Iran toward weaponization if cornered. Trump's rejection of talks makes it much easier now, but Iran's Supreme National Security Council denies negotiations, seeing them as capitulation. Escalation could draw in Russia, supplying advanced arms, or China, whose oil imports from Iran fuel its economy. Disruptions here could trigger Beijing's intervention. Proxy wars amplify the peril. Hezbollah's barrages could engulf Lebanon, pulling in Syria and potentially Turkey if Kurds rise. Gulf states, hosting U.S. bases, face internal revolts if casualties mount. Saudi intercepts of drones near Riyadh signal vulnerability. Iran's blockade threats to the Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of global oil flows, could choke energy supplies, sparking famines and blackouts far beyond the region. Humanitarian catastrophe looms large. Civilian strikes in Iran, schools, hospitals, echo Gaza's horrors, potentially radicalizing populations and breeding generations of resentment. Holy site risks in Jerusalem could ignite religious wars, uniting disparate factions against the West. Economically, prolonged conflict depletes U.S. interceptors, $12 million each against $20,000 drones, hitting a rupture window by mid-March, leaving defenses bare. Geopolitically, alliances fracture. European pledges of support contrast with Global South condemnations, eroding U.S. credibility. If Iran sustains attacks, it could inspire other adversaries, destabilizing the international order. This isn't contained danger. It's a domino chain where one miscalculation, a stray missile hitting a nuclear facility, could unleash apocalypse. The acceleration is palpable. From initial strikes to multi-front assaults, the momentum builds toward irreversible catastrophe. Shifting to the market shockwaves, this war is jolting global finance like a seismic quake, with oil prices surging and equities plummeting in a frenzy of uncertainty. As of this morning, U.S. crude has leaped 7.5% to hover around $82 a barrel, while Brent crude spiked 6.2% to $77, briefly topping $82 amid fears of supply disruptions. Analysts warn that if Iran blockades the Strait of Hormuz or strikes Saudi and Qatari facilities, prices could rocket to $100 or higher, igniting inflation infernos worldwide. The S&P 500 tumbled 0.9% yesterday, wiping out year-to-date gains, with the Dow and Nasdaq each dropping about 1%. Smaller companies in the Russell 2000 fared worse, plunging up to 4% before closing 1% down, as they're more vulnerable to economic ebb and flow. Futures point to further slides. S&P down 1.62%, Nasdaq off 2.15%, Dow shedding 1.5%. Volatility index soared to 25.40, up $5.53, signaling investor panic as uncertainty reigns. Safe havens are booming. Gold climbed 1.2% to $2,534 per ounce, a flight to quality amid the turmoil. Defense stocks like Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman surged pre-market, as did oil giants Exxon and Chevron, profiting from the price boom. But broader sectors suffer. Airlines and cruise lines led declines, fearing fuel cost spikes and travel bans. Crypto markets, trading 24/7, saw oil-tied futures jump 5% to $71.70, underscoring the round-the-clock anxiety. From the New York Times, inflation risks emerge as energy costs mount, potentially derailing global recovery. CNN reports stock futures sinking over 1%, with warnings of prolonged shutdowns pushing oil skyward. Reuters notes initial knee-jerk reactions moderating, but investors brace for bigger backlashes, hoping for swift resolution. Oxford Economics consolidates analyses on growth implications, stressing rapid escalation risks. 24/7 Wall Street highlights S&P futures dropping on straight threats, with Trump signaling 4 more weeks of conflict. Markets detest such ambiguity. CNBC warns of risk-off trades, with dollar and gold gains as equities retreat. AGF Investments sees no major correction base case, but expects choppiness, noting U.S. aims for oil control could lower prices long-term if regime changes. ABC reports U.S. stocks erasing losses, but oil leaping on clog fears. Al Jazeera details attacks on energy facilities raising global prices, with disruptions hitting gasoline, electricity, heating. American Action Forum underscores U.S. energy affordability challenges amid volatility. This isn't transient. Prolonged war could vacuum oil supplies, hammering consumers with higher bills, stoking recessions. Qatar's force majeure on gas, Dubai's port closures. These ripple to fertilizers, chemicals, aluminum, inflating food and goods. Banks may hike rates, squeezing mortgages and loans. Yet some see upside. Regime change could stabilize oil under U.S. influence, but that's a gamble amid current carnage. The acceleration is evident. From pre-war jitters to daily dives, markets are in survival mode, each strike amplifying the economic earthquake. Now, consider the escalation scenarios unfolding before our eyes. Worst case, Iran, feeling cornered, unleashes its remaining arsenal on Gulf oil fields, crippling Saudi and UAE production, oil to $150, global recession ensues. Or, proxies like Houthis close the Red Sea, Yemen's chaos spilling over, drawing Egypt and Sudan in. If Kurds revolt with U.S. backing, Turkey invades, fracturing NATO ties. Nuclear threshold. Strikes near facilities could cause meltdowns, or Iran rushes a bomb, prompting preemptive nukes. Apocalyptic. Broader war. Russia arms Iran, escalating to Ukraine proxy. China blockades Taiwan in distraction. Cyber attacks. Iran hacks U.S. grids. Blackouts ensue. Social media buzzes with dread. Posts warn of magazine depth problems. U.S. interceptors depleting by mid-March, leaving vulnerabilities. MAGA accounts hail dominance, but critics like Gordon Little predict U.S. loss, economic collapse. If mediation fails, ground invasions loom, but Iran's mountains make it a quagmire worse than Afghanistan. Humanitarian surge, mass displacements, famines if supplies halt. Ideological backlash. Holy site hits radicalize millions. The rhythm quickens. From naval clashes to base assaults, each day heightens the stakes toward these doomsday paths. For viewers like you, the impact hits home hard. Gas prices could double, heating bills soar, groceries inflate as fertilizers scarce. Travel bans strand families, stocks erode retirements. Job losses in energy-dependent sectors, supply chains snag electronics, cars. Security tightens, terror alerts rise, airports scrutinize. Mental toll, anxiety from constant news, kids fearing drafts if war widens. Yet, opportunities. Defense jobs boom, renewables accelerate. But urgency mounts. This crisis demands vigilance, as personal finances and safety hang in the balance. Strategically, this shifts global power dramatically. U.S. dominance reasserted, but at cost. Alliances strained, China gains if oil disrupts. Iran weakened, proxies diminished, but vacuum breeds ISIS-like groups. Russia exploits distractions, Europe energy-dependent pivots to alternatives. Trump's vision: post-surrender Iran as ally, but resistance hardens anti-West blocs. The escalation redefines spheres, with winners emerging from the ashes. In closing, this crisis barrels forward with no brakes, demanding our unwavering attention. From bunker blasts to market meltdowns, the world teeters on the edge. Stay informed, stay safe. The next hours could redefine everything. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to Global News Network for real-time updates and in-depth analysis.